Hello and welcome to another episode of Jed's Journals. Recently I've been playing something's not right. I've got to make a change. Hold on. Oh, that's better. God, it's crazy what a change in lighting can do. Hey. So, lately I've been playing a lot of Dwarf Fortress. If you don't know what Dwarf Fortress is, I'll kind of get into it. But this isn't going to be a very deep episode. I'm not going to talk about compare it to something else or make some kind of statement about how more of these games should get made or have a higher standing or anything like that. That's not the vibe today. Today I just want to kind of rant about something I've been obsessed with, because every person I know in real life has never played Dwarf Fortress and has no interest in it. So I have no one to talk to about it. So you're my outlet to rant today, unfortunately for you. So first I guess I'll start with my all-time favorite thing about Dwarf Fortress, which is every time you boot the game up, it'll make this sound at you, which I just think is great. I told you, I'm not getting into anything deep here today. But if you don't know what Dwarf Fortress is, it's a game that came out in 2002. It's kind of a free browser game, but the thing is that it has very minimal graphics. Like, it's basically no graphics. Like, a lot of dots and dashes and slashes and just kind of symbols that represent the world, right? It's all very abstract. And it kind of needed to be like this because the game is so massive and expansive, and it runs this massive kind of simulation of the world and this kind of made up physics, and like every person in the game has their own thoughts and feelings, and so there's a lot of computing power that needs to go into running Dwarf Fortress, so that means it needs to be quite a minimal visual style. But then in 2023 it got this re-release, which essentially all it did was add graphics to the game. This is not a free version, this is something you have to pay for, and people were very happy to pay for it. But what is Dwarf Fortress as a game? It is a colony simulation kind of management game, right? So you don't really play as anyone. Essentially, you've got you start off with a colony of 7 dwarves, and you're just trying to kind of help them survive. You dig underground and you make little rooms for them to stay, and you make workshops for them to make furniture and food, and then you have to dig a little deeper to see if you can find special ores and gems and maybe some monsters to fight, kind of thing. All of this, though, is kind of dumbing down the game in a way, because it is really massively expansive, and every kind of aspect of the game is something that's hard to come to grips with. In order to make an army, it's not as simple as just like selecting some guys to go fight. Like, you have to make a squad, you have to make sure that they're training so they're actually good at fighting, you have to make sure that they are consistently training, because otherwise they'll like fall out of step. You know, it's that kind of thing. Like, to make soap, which is vitally important to making sure you have a healthy selection of dwarves. In order to make soap, you need 3 separate workshops. Like, you need to be able to have a furnace to make ash, then you have to have an ashery to turn the ash into lye, and then from the lye is then what turns into soap. And there's a few things like that, right, that require some steps. Like, it's more intricate and detailed than that. Every single thing in the game has a certain like quality level, right? So if somebody makes a piece of furniture, it'll either be shit quality or it'll be a masterpiece or it'll be somewhere in the middle. Like, everything is simulated like that, and all of your dwarves have their own thoughts and feelings and needs. They all have certain people in their lives that are important. Some of them enjoy being around others, some of them don't like that. It's all this very intricate simulation of everything, right? It's not just kind of like, oh, I'm happy or I'm sad right now because I'm eating. It's like, is what I'm eating actually something I enjoy eating? Like, level of detail. So it's this high kind of complexity game with a lot of stuff happening in it. There's a billion different like little creatures and ores and like furniture types, and as I say this, I imagine it comes across as quite overwhelming. Why would somebody play something like this when you have RimWorld, which is similar but easier to understand, or even The Sims, which is another kind of like simulation management type game, but lacking that kind of higher complexity? Well, it's because in Dwarf Fortress, the main motto of the game is that losing is fun. You might dig too deep, uncover a monster, and it'll just wreck your base, and that's the game. Players are used to that. We've accepted it. You know, you might like knock down a tree that'll land on somebody. It might be that your entire colony somehow gets swarmed with ravens. It's that kind of vibe, right? You might make one wrong step where you choose to go raid a village that's a while away, and then they'll retaliate and just wipe everyone out. It's this kind of stuff, right? There's a ghost! New migrants have arrived and I'm haunted. It's if you think of it more as a storytelling kind of generative game rather than something you're trying to win, you have a lot more fun. And if you kind of go into it patiently and expecting to fail and kind of learn as you go, it gets really quite detailed, and it's a game that once it clicks, it clicks really hard, because suddenly it's like, I'll just make some more rooms for my dwarves, and then all these people have immigrated, so I've got to make more rooms, and what's down here? I should have my dwarves mine out this cavern just to see, and I've uncovered a new cavern. I should see what's down here a little bit, and there's a troll, I should kill that. Like, it's this kind of constant circle in your brain that it's really hard to get out of, because every action you do in the game is actually quite simple, but it's the reaction from the world that can get quite complicated. There's obviously dwarves, but there's also elves and humans, and all of these kind of creatures have a reaction to you in the world as well. For example, my main fortress where I am right now, I'm in kind of this heavily forested area that's controlled by elves, and the elves don't like you knocking down trees. So I've spent some time knocking down a fair few trees, and the elves like to send delegates over to say, I wish you filthy scum would stop knocking down our trees. And you can go, all right, okay, we'll stop knocking down the trees, and then you'll knock down some more trees, and they'll go, oi, stop it. So it's that kind of game. I adore it so much. I love this kind of high level of simulation. I love that every person has thoughts and feelings. Up the top of the screen is this gauge of how happy everyone is. And for me, I've always got a few that are like really angry. They're furious at me, and I'm doing everything I can to make them happy, but they hate me. And whenever I click on them, one of their unmet needs is always something like unmet need, socialize, or unmet need, see your family. And it's like, Usul, just go see your family, dude. Just go see them. I'm not stopping you from doing that. What do you mean your unmet need is socialize? Just go to the tavern, you idiot. Why is this my problem? Like, it's as unreasonable as people actually are. This isn't my problem. You can't do this thing. Just go do it. You've got your own free will. And so as kind of goofy as this is, right, it's very thematic, because the game generates kind of text for everything that's going on. If someone fights, it tells you in very intricate detail how that fight happened. Like, very intricate. It always blows my mind how detailed the fights are, because, I mean, what's happening on screen is some guys are kind of janking around. Like, I should say this, is that the way the game moves around is very janky. There's not that fluid movement. Like, it's all exactly grid-based, where you'll see, like, people jump around, and visually, when people are moving around, it's very hard to make out what's going on, right? So if you've got a fight going on, it just kind of looks like two creatures are standing next to each other, and then suddenly one of them is horizontal. That's how fights go. What's so interesting about it is then you can, on the left, you can see how the fight went down. You can read about it, and it's so detailed in that, like, Corbin threw a left punch and clocked Krinko in the chin. Krinko took a step back and panicked about being punched. He then took a right hook and missed. Like, it's so detailed like that, and you can see every little bit of it, to the point where, like, you start to really invest emotionally in the lives of these dwarves. Like, it's all so detailed, and you can see it, and you can picture in your head what's going on. Like, if somebody's gone into the tavern and sat down, I can see in my head them entering and, you know, having and sitting down and getting a drink and listening to somebody talk. Like, as abstract and minimalist as the visual style is, it just makes it all so much easier to imagine. And with that, it's like this kind of movie that's constantly happening in your mind. When you've created this wonderful fortress where, you know, your dwarves are kind of thriving to some degree, and then you've dug a little too deep where monsters are coming out and causing a bit of havoc, suddenly you can picture in your mind, like, the despair that goes on in these dwarves' lives. I can see them sitting around writing like melancholy ballads about why their god has subjected them to this kind of life. You know, if they run out of alcohol or food and there's nothing really they can do about it, you can see like it really has an effect, and you feel sorry for these dwarves that you've somehow failed. It's something that really had an impact on me, and I don't know why. Is in the hospitals, sometimes your dwarves will just kind of die just from old age, like they weren't poisoned or had anything wrong with them. They just kind of pass away, and they're on the traction bed, and you can click on them to see, you know, on their body, and there's a description of them lying there motionless with tears on their faces, and it's so hard. It has such an impact, just these little things for such a goofy game. These little things just feel so real because everything is so perfectly simulated, and the music just carries this so much. I mean, atmospherically and audibly, there's not a lot going on there. You know, there's a little clinks and clanks, and maybe if you're looking in the tavern, there's some atmos that plays of, like, you know, tavern kind of bar atmos. But the music that they put in is so perfect. So emotional, and it has so much depth that every time a track starts playing, it feels like I need to stop everything to listen to it, because it really carries the world. And I think as well, on top of that, the main menu image, I love it so much because it conveys everything the game's about. It has these kind of goofy looking dwarves on their way through a cavern. You know, one of them's leading, one of them's looking a little scared. It's kind of this goofy little gaggle of dwarves, but then at the other end is this big ominous fortress, and it changes the tone. It's those two tones in the game that make it work so well, where the game isn't trying to make you laugh, it's just naturally funny. You know, it's that idea in comedy that, like, be a strong comedic actor, you need to act like you're taking everything seriously. You yourself as a character are just existing in a world that is just inherently silly, but you as a character is quite serious. That's kind of how Dwarf Fortress acts.
The director, the thing is that we know that we're being funny, but you can't let the audience know for 1 second that you're trying to be funny, not for 1 second.
I mean, for most of my career, I've been a dramatic actor. Everybody thinks I'm a comedian, but that's not quite true. Comedian is someone who says funny things. Comic is someone who says things funny. So I'm neither. I'm someone who says unfunny things. I say unfunny things in an unfunny way. And somehow it seems to end up funny.
The world itself is serious. The characters in it take their lives very seriously. If they run out of food and drink, like, that's a big deal. If they can't pray to their gods, then that really matters to them. But at the same time, if you knock over a tree and it lands on one of them and it kills them, that's really funny. If you go into a cavern and you uncover a big monster that kills all of them, it's pretty funny. It's like this very serious group of dwarves that are just stumbling around fucking everything up. And it's so good. I guess that's really all I wanted to say about Dwarf Fortress. I just wanted to kind of have a quick rant about why I love it so much. If what I've said here has inspired you to try the game, my biggest recommendation would be that just to take it slow. It's going to be really intimidating and overwhelming to start, but if you just accept that kind of your first few tries, you're probably going to fuck it up and everyone's going to die, or, you know, you're going to do something really stupid, or it's a game that allows you to take these risks and slowly uncover what the game is about. You know, the game really only clicked with me when I was like 30 hours in. And to be honest, that was because I learned that making taverns is massively important. That's my biggest recommendation, because the game has a tutorial, but it doesn't tell you how important taverns are, because they actually get your dwarves together to hang out and socialize, as well as attract outside members of the world to come and hang out with you. And that's vital. And what I'll also say is this, and this is massive: if you are farming if you're doing a farm, you need to have a farm for plump helmets because they make alcohol. But what's really important is that you go into the food list and make sure your dwarves are not eating the plump helmets. They need to only be using it for alcohol, because when they turn it into alcohol, that creates the seeds, which creates more plump helmets. And so you'll never run out of alcohol this way, which is massively important. Those are my 2 big pieces of advice. Taverns, plump helmets not being eaten. Otherwise, the tutorial's pretty good. Yeah, I mean, I think that's it for my thoughts on Dwarf Fortress. Again, I'm still pretty new at the game, and there's a lot I haven't delved into or really thought that heavily about. So if you are a Dwarf Fortress expert and you know everything about it, please leave constructive advice in the comments. That's all I ask, because I'm shit at the game. I admit that. I've played a lot of it, but I don't have the full breadth of it in my mind. Please leave constructive advice in the comments for anything maybe I'm doing wrong that you see, or just a general advice that you have. Yeah, that's all I had to say. How do I sign off? Maybe I just sign off like this.